pending ICE assassin claim. One more. My last submission request is a New York Times article titled FBI Agent Who Tried to Investigate ICE Officer in Shooting Resigns.
Without objection.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, I think you and pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges: puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services. Attorney General Bondi, does a convicted sex offender like Ghislaine Maxwell deserve special treatment and privileges in prison? Yes or no?
Let me be crystal clear on this. No. And
Thank you.
let me keep going. No, let me keep going.
Perfect. Well, I
did not know she was being transferred.
I asked you yes or no.
She was not transferred to a lower
Mr. Chairman,
level.
please stop the clock and remind the witness of the rules. One rule she needs to understand here.
And I'm glad that we're agreeing. So when we're agreeing, we can move on to some other things. But I want you to know that every time she does get these perks, and it's been publicly reported, that the folks she's abused, the survivors who are sitting here, they see themselves as being denied justice. They feel re-traumatized. And I'm glad that we agree on that. But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration. But that begs the question: who ordered her to be transferred to the minimum security prison that she was ineligible for? Who signed off on the special privileges? Was it Mr. Blanche? Was it one of your other subordinates? So please, can you tell us who sent her there, since you don't agree she should be there?
I said I do not agree she should receive special treatment. She was transferred, I learned after the fact, to the same level facility, and that is a question for the Bureau of Prisons. I was not involved in that at all. The same level facility, I don't know why, but you know, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple of
died
other
on a subway.
Right, and I absolutely...
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you. So as we've heard, she took the fifth in response to every single question in that committee hearing. And her lawyer dangled the offer of clemency. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison, yes or no? You said you hope she dies there, so I'm hoping the answer is no.
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about what should happen.
Well, when it agrees with you, but you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about
murdered
her all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but
offender
I am not
in
here
your
to
jurisdiction.
testify before Congress. You are. That is your job today. That's what you're getting paid for.
With attack.
So I want you to know that your own DOJ employee, he's recently been demoted and had some other problems, advises on pardons. Do you think he will be advising Mr. Trump on any kind of clemency or pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I'm not going to speculate, and you couldn't even identify properly. That's why you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You couldn't properly identify her relative.
I absolutely
It's embarrassing.
have been, and her family, by the way, appreciates all of the condolences, all of the help, everything that our law enforcement in North Carolina has been doing to help her family. Her family feels well treated. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article by former Attorney General William P. Barr entitled, "Why Pam Bondi Didn't Publish All the Epstein Files in 30 Days. The answer is simple. It was not possible," from the Wall Street Journal.
Well said. Without objection, the gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam, I'm sorry. Yes. May I respond 20 seconds to something that Congresswoman Ross said?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. She also opposed a sex offender registry as head of North Carolina ACLU. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. And I'd like to pick up where you left off a moment ago, because we convene here today as a committee for the stated purpose of conducting oversight of the Department of Justice. And so it's critical for us to focus first on the mission of the department and assess your success in discharging it. So the mission of the department is to enforce federal law, defend the rule of law, and protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, drug trafficking, fraud, and exploitation, to promote public safety. And what we have heard today unequivocally is that President Trump's Department of Justice, under your leadership, Attorney General Bondi, is doing exactly that. Just a moment ago, you shared with us some incredible statistics that the United States, under your leadership, has achieved the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That in the first year of this administration, murder is down 21%, robbery is down 23%, carjacking down 43%, and gun assault down 22%. That is what public safety looks like. Under your leadership and that of President Trump, you've located more than 6,000 child victims of trafficking and exploitation, arrested 1,700 child predators, and apprehended more than 300 human traffickers. Significant increases. And those aren't just statistics. Those are precious lives that your department and the men and women of federal law enforcement have saved. Madam Attorney General, you've mentioned a couple of specific criminal trends during this hearing that I'd like to discuss with you further, because one of our important roles in Congress is making sure that our laws and our law enforcement stay ahead of predators as technology evolves. I lead legislation in the House, along with bipartisan co-sponsors on this committee, to make sextortion a clearly defined criminal offense. We actually passed that out of the House of Representatives. We have a bill to promote Operation Renewed Hope to help rescue more child victims, and the Defiance Act to provide legal recourse to victims of deepfake AI intimate images. I would love to hear your perspective and what you are seeing related to these technology-based criminal trends, sextortion, and AI deepfakes. What are you seeing at the Department of Justice, and why do you believe that efforts to combat these types of crimes are important?
Sextortion, and thank you for supporting that, Congresswoman. I think that was a bipartisan effort, actually. I think many of you on both sides of the aisle supported that. Thank you for that. You know, as a career prosecutor, it's horrible seeing that, and seeing that young women and often young boys have been exploited with sextortion. And I see, thank you, both sides of the aisle nodding on that. It's horrific. The suicide rates go up. And that's why we have to do everything in our power to protect not only young girls, adult women, boys and men from sextortion, because it is happening, and we're doing everything in our power, thanks to your legislation, all of you, to stop that.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the Department of Justice programs like Project Safe Childhood and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces, partnerships that bring together federal, state, and local law enforcement. Sometimes the work between those law enforcement groups together really creates some incredibly powerful outcomes and some great success stories. I know you, as Florida's Attorney General, had a tremendous amount of leadership in our state, trying to make sure we were taking care of children, also the elderly, protecting them from fraud, ending drug trafficking. Tell us a little bit about some of those departments within DOJ.
Yeah, when you talked about Project Safe Neighborhoods, we've done a lot of that in Florida when I was state AG, and actually back when I was a state prosecutor prior to being Attorney General. That is so important. I feel like what we've been doing in DC too, with the Take Back DC and Make DC Safe Again, is similar to that. Going into the neighborhoods, working with the community, seeing law enforcement officers out there playing basketball with kids who live in the neighborhood. It's pretty remarkable what we've seen firsthand. Citizens in Memphis saying that they can walk outdoors now and they feel safe. People coming up thanking law enforcement and working hand in hand with them. We will continue all of these programs and working jointly with both sides of the aisle to keep our families safe.
Thank you for that, Madam Attorney General. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce for the record a letter to Director Gabbard from Mr. Warner and Mr. Himes, and a letter of response from her to them about who invited her to Atlanta, and a copy of the search warrant. And I'd also like to just make clear for the record, the reason people in Memphis weren't going out was because the ice was on the ground and we were afraid we'd fall. But other than that, we go out all the time.
Gentlemen, without objection, there's unanimous consent. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney General Bondi, according to your department, a child is sexually abused in the United States every 9 minutes. And the vast majority of survivors never get justice. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Epstein case has resonated so deeply with so many Americans. And the other reason, I think, is because it has revealed a two-tiered system of justice. And the powerful are protected and the survivors rarely get any accountability. And the Epstein files contain evidence of a multi-decade international criminal conspiracy involving some of the wealthiest and the most powerful people in the world. There's evidence of financial crimes, political corruption, sex trafficking, and of course, horrible sexual abuse. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't a game. These are real people, people who have suffered, who are sitting here with us today, and they deserve answers, and they deserve accountability. And I'm here to try to get some for them. Now, I've seen some of the unredacted Epstein files, and obviously, as you know, President Trump's name is all over them, but so are the names of other senior Trump officials: Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce; John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy; and Stephen Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These men were appointed by President Trump to senior positions in his administration. All of them have clear and confirmed ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Attorney General Bondi, yes or no, has the Justice Department asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Epstein?
Excuse me. Secretary Lutnick has addressed those ties himself.
I'm asking you, has the Justice Department specifically asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
He has addressed those ties himself.
Has the DOJ asked Secretary Phelan about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know whether he has addressed those or not.
Has the Deputy Secretary Feinberg talked to the Department of Justice about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? Has the Department of Justice talked to Deputy Secretary Feinberg about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, which are clearly spelled out in the files? It's a very simple question. It's not a trick question. I'm just asking you.
Yeah, I'm stunned that you want to continue talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Epstein
Okay,
instead
I'm
of a
reclaiming my time. I'm asking
murder.
you not a trick question, a simple
Stunned.
question. Okay, so what is clear is we have evidence.
Do you know who Chris Malin is?
We have evidence that 3 senior officials within the Trump administration have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And what
does ties mean?
I can conclude
What does
from what
ties
you are
mean?
saying that you have not talked to them.
What does ties
So,
mean?
I think Americans would be shocked to learn that you are not interested in talking with these officials who have ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
What does
across
ties
the
mean?
world,
Can you define that?
across the world,
Can you
prominent
define
men
ties?
who've been
Time
exposed
belongs to the
in the files have resigned their jobs in disgrace, and that's a good first start. And that same
Disgrace is
standard,
not saying the word
this
Chris
same
Malin.
standard should apply here. And Americans want accountability.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president
he?
aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask
was
questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
One second.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so
He
I'm
was
going to
shot,
conclude
and
that
she
the president, in
never
fact,
mentioned
did
him
know about his
in
ties
her
because he
district.
was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee will
Chair.
be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here.
You
The
got your
American
5
people
minutes.
have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I see that my time is almost expired, so I will say this. Do the right thing, Attorney General. Meet with the survivors. They have been asking for a year. Meet with the survivors. Do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
That'd be up to the gentleman, but.
Absolutely, Madam
Thank
President.
you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once when he was
Weak
here.
sauce. Weak
And
sauce.
also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
from the
is
river
Jewish.
Epstein
I just wanna be
as
clear.
anti-Semitic.
Do you want to go there, Attorney
time
General?
belongs
Or
to
do
the
you want to go there? Are
Time
you
belongs to the
serious?
gentleman
Talking
from
about
South
anti-Semitism
Carolina.
to a woman who
Lady
lost
will-
her grandfather in the
I reclaim
Holocaust?
my time. I reclaim my
Order.
time.
Really?
The committee will be in order.
Talk to Jared Wise about anti-Semitism.
The ranking member knows that.
Can I get like 30 seconds back,
Yeah,
since
I've been.
Ms. Ballant took
I think
30
the
of
whole
mine.
committee knows. I've been very
All right,
generous
thank
in
you.
making sure everyone gets their 5 minutes in the same.
Attorney General,
reply
I'm
to
going
the
to talk about
gentleman from South
sanctuary cities
Carolina.
for a second, which limit the federal government's ability to enforce immigration law. They're kind of a new thing that Democrat jurisdictions are doing. They're in violation of federal law. During President Trump's first term, he rightly targeted sanctuary jurisdictions to try to force them to cooperate with federal immigration law. Federal immigration law, mind you, that was voted on in 1996, most recently, in a bipartisan Congress, signed by a Democrat president. But they are in violation of that law. These states and jurisdictions feel entitled to certain grants, of course. Y'all are combating that. Do sanctuary policies limit the federal government's ability to accurately estimate how many criminal illegals are in the country?
Yes.
Thank you. This means that the number of illegals could be higher, probably higher. Does this hurt the federal government's ability to carry out immigration laws designed by Congress?
Yes, Congressman.
In your opinion, do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration and Democrat pro-sanctuary policies make our communities safer and for the American taxpayer? Do sanctuary policies make our communities safer?
No, Congressman.
I want to do a brief video to highlight sanctuary cities. So what's strange to me, if you look at this board behind me, in New York, there are 7,000 criminal illegal aliens since January 20th of last year that have been released into the public because New York is not honoring detainers requested by ICE. California, similarly, has released 4,500 criminal illegal aliens. There are 33,000 under detainer in California alone. And of the people released, I think it's remarkable that those released in New York, 29 homicides, 2,500 assaults, almost 200 burglaries. These are people that are released into our community by these states that refuse to cooperate. Last August, Michael Jordan Castellano Fonseca, a criminal illegal alien with ties to Tren de Agua, shot 2 people in front of 5 children in the sanctuary state of Colorado. DHS lodged a detainer on him. He's awaiting trial, but the question is whether Colorado's sanctuary policies will prevent him from being removed from the country. Yes or no? Do you think that sanctuary jurisdictions, if they cooperated with ICE, those illegals in custody could be transferred to ICE properly instead of being held in taxpayer-funded jails and then released into our community?
Yes, Congressman.
Wouldn't it be more efficient and safer then if Democrats simply cooperated with the federal government, these sanctuary jurisdictions cooperated with the federal government and honored ICE detainers? And why? Why do you think?
Of course, because so many criminals are running to sanctuary jurisdictions. Many of your colleagues across the aisle who we've seen speaking today about Epstein don't want to talk about the illegal criminals in their own jurisdiction for that reason. And yes, we need to do everything we can to work together to make America safer, and they're not doing that.
This is not a partisan issue. People want to feel safe in their communities. Nobody wants a criminal illegal alien released into the street. I think the thing that maybe the American people don't quite understand is that when you do not honor a detainer, as we've seen, an illegal is released into the public, and now it's up to ICE to maybe apprehend them, rather than behind the courtroom passing them off from one law enforcement to the next. Is that true?
Absolutely.
What do you think what is the Department of Justice doing right now to combat sanctuary policies in our country?
We're doing everything in our power, obviously, to combat that. Donald Trump is doing everything he can because we are going to make America safe. We are going to get illegal criminal aliens out of this country. We're going to get the gangs out, TDA, MS-13, all of the gangs in this country. We're going to get the drug dealers out and the drugs, and that's what we've been fighting to do. And I wish we could do it on a bipartisan basis, but they just can't do it.
And the decrease in numbers speak for themselves. Thank you for your work.
Gentleman's time is...
Mr. Chairman, we have some UCs, if that's okay.
That is okay.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. You see on the National Institute of Justice's study on undocumented immigrants having an offender rate lower than U.S.-born citizens. I'd like to enter this in the record from 2024.
Without objection.
And I have several myself, Mr. Chairman. The Guardian, January 26, 2026, why is Trump granting clemency to convicted fraudsters?
Objection.
January 20, 2026, NBC, Trump's pardons forgive financial crimes that came with hundreds of millions of dollars in punishment.
Objection.
Washington Post, December 19, 2025, Trump's pardons wipe out payments to defrauded victims.
Without objection.
And finally, May 30th, 2024, Trump found guilty by Manhattan jury on 34 felony counts of fraud.
Without objection. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda, and I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state, all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much more to your corrupt tenure as Attorney General. You directed prosecutors to investigate elected officials in welcoming jurisdictions, and you got thrown out of court when you sued Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. You directed prosecutors to prioritize low-level immigration cases while gutting enforcement against corporate criminals and public corruption. You revived draconian
You're
law
talking
of
about public corruption,
1798,
Whoa.
which should be repealed to illegally send people to a torture prison in El Salvador. You fired over 100 immigration judges, including the assistant chief immigration judge in Chicago, without cause, and installed unqualified military judges whom you instructed to deny asylum in violation of the law. You prosecute the president's enemies like Jim Comey and Tish James while giving impunity to federal agents who are murdering and brutalizing and terrorizing constituents, including in Chicagoland, in my neighborhood. I saw it last year firsthand. You and Kash Patel covered up the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in my district by ICE agents. You tried to investigate Renee Good instead of the ICE agent who murdered her, and you tried to cover up the murder of Alex Peretti by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lives in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicagoland. Your MAGA base despises you because you're covering up the Epstein file. How ironic. And even your own boss has repeatedly complained to your staff about you, calling you weak and ineffective. Weak and ineffective. That's what Donald Trump thinks of you already. You will not win, however. Chicagoland rejects you. The American people reject you. Our communities have demonstrated our strength and resilience in the face of cruelty and cowardice. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem and impose accountability for every criminal action. But you can spare yourself more humiliation. Resign now and submit yourself to accountability by the American people. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record this Wall Street Journal article dated January 12, 2026, entitled, "Trump has complained about Pam Bondi repeatedly to aides." Thank you, and I yield back.
Objection. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman.
May I have 20 seconds, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's hear the opposition research.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, that they're not running for, he's not running for office again because, well, I don't know why you're not running for office again, but after the filing deadline, you publicly announced you would not run when your chief of staff, Patty Garcia, announced and took your seat.
That's a state matter. That isn't a federal matter. You should investigate crimes.
You should
investigate
time belongs to the gentleman
violations
from
of the law.
Texas. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas.
And a little flexibility on the time. I appreciate the chairman. Madam Attorney General, am I correct that under your leadership, the Department of Justice has prosecuted cases of non-citizen voting? So it's false, as some of my Democratic colleagues have claimed, that it doesn't happen.
Yes.
I ask that today because we're voting on the Save America Act today to enact common sense policies to ensure only American citizens vote in American elections and enact federal voter ID laws. But it's true, for example, that in just this month, a federal grand jury in Newark indicted 2 men with illegally voting in federal election and making false statements. Mohammed Mazammel and Mohammed Shakil were non-citizens at the time they registered to vote. This happens, it happens regularly, and you're prosecuting those crimes, correct?
Yes.
But does that prosecution of those criminals overturn their previously cast votes?
That's all pending.
But it does not overturn votes that they've cast, right? So passing the Save
no,
America
Congressman.
Act would help deal with that problem.
Yes, Congressman.
Second question. As Attorney General, you're in charge of the Executive Office of Immigration Review, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
The Biden-Mayorkas regime caused the immigration court case backlog to explode, correct?
Explode.
Does that sound about right that in September of 2020, 4 months before President Biden took office, there was a backlog of 1.5 million cases, but by the time President Biden left office, the backlog reached nearly 4.2 million cases?
It sounds about right, but I don't have the exact numbers.
It would be accurate to say that most individuals who file for asylum have a meritless or fraudulent claim?
Most. I don't have the numbers.
Oh, so does it sound correct that of the asylum cases adjudicated in FY 2023 under the Biden regime, that only 14% resulted in an asylum grant and only 12% in fiscal year 2024? Does that sound correct?
It sounds correct. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers.
Could you get that information to us to
Yes,
verify that data?
I'll get all that information to you.
Under the Trump administration, immigration judges complete an average of 65,000 cases per month, the highest average completion rate in at least a decade. Does that sound correct?
That sounds correct.
Ms. Bondi, how many new cases under EOIR received in fiscal year 2025 have you all had? And of those, what percentage have been granted asylum? Do you know?
I can try to get you those numbers. I thought I had those.
That'd be great, because my question is whether President Trump's decision to pause asylum in the wake of the shooting of a National Guardsman by an Afghani here in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital, helped to stop the backlog in your office. Does that sound correct?
Yes, Congressman.
My point being that the leadership of this administration is ending the backlog, reducing the backlog, making sure that we don't have fraudulent asylum claims clogging it, and keeping Americans safe. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So a couple other quick questions on another important topic that has been raised by colleagues on both sides of the aisle with respect to the Epstein case. A few questions. One, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in July 2019 for sex trafficking under the Trump administration in his first term. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
And that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged in 2020 also under the Trump administration, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So it is safe to say that the administration led on that issue and that there was silence in the previous administration. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. Almost complete silence from everyone who's been trying to still talk about Epstein. They didn't say a word under the Biden administration. Nothing.
And I want to make one other point and then another question, though, that is important. I want to make one observation, and that is that we've heard the information today, which is troubling, that Jane Doe's, that victims' information was made public and was unredacted in the files that were released on Friday. So my question is, some of us had argued when we were dealing with the discharge petition in Congress, that when Congress inserted itself into the process, that we needed to be very careful to ensure that we were protecting victims. So a question that is both, I just want to make that clear, that some of us were fighting for that here, and we didn't get a chance to amend it or change it. So that was concerning. But a question a little more pointed, I have to say, is why, though, were the victims' names released that shouldn't have been? That there were names in the files, that these Jane Does, that their names shouldn't have been made public, when there were some accusers whose names were redacted? That's question one. Mm-hmm. And question two was that Ghislaine Maxwell was put in jail for trafficking minors. Rightly so, and you properly said here at this table, you hope she dies in jail. Well, I want to know, will anyone besides her or Epstein, which I congratulate President Trump's previous administration and this Department of Justice for continuing all of that, but that they were indicted, but will anyone else be indicted and prosecuted under this, given the information that's in front of us? So 2 questions.
Thank you for letting me answer that. They didn't want to hear my answer on the other side. Yes, given the tight time frame of 30 days, I believe we got everything released within a little over 60 days. I'm talking as fast as I can. My time is up. We did the best we could immediately. If everyone's been coming to view the documents, if someone's name should not have been redacted, we're releasing it. If someone's name was redacted, we said right away, was not redacted and should have been, meaning a victim. We went back and redacted it. We're doing everything we can based on the tight time frame and over 3 million pages that we released that Donald Trump signed for pure transparency. Second, what was your second question?
About whether another individual will be indicted
absolutely.
and
Thank you for
prosecuted.
asking that. And they never wanted to hear the answer to that. We have pending investigations in our office.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Unanimous consent request from the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I have several UCs as receipts. I'd like to have unanimous consent to introduce the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7 dated September 25th, 25.
Without objection.
The Bondi Department of Justice memo dated December 4th, 2025.
Without objection.
An article from Newsweek entitled DOJ Deletes Study Alleging Rise in Far-Right Terrorism dated September 18th, 2025.
Without objection.
Notice article from October 3rd, 2025. Trump's directive on organized political violence could lead to increased surveillance of his critics.
Without objection.
Washington Post article, September 25th, 2025. Trump targets domestic terrorists, but only mentions the radical left.
Without objection.
Idaho Capital Sun, October 18th, 2025. Rest easy, Idahoans. The No King demonstrators are American patriots.
Without objection.
Attacks on freedom of speech, what nonprofits need to know, published by the National Council of Nonprofits, the largest network of nonprofits in America.
Without objection.
The Freedom from Religious Foundation warns that Bondi memo weaponizes federal law enforcement against non-Christians and dissenting viewpoints.
Without objection.
A Ken Klipperstein blog from January 28th, 26, ICE's secret watch lists of Americans.
Without objection.
And an Intercept article from February 2nd, 26, Trump calls his enemies terrorists. Does that mean he can kill them?
Without objection, the gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi.
Good afternoon.
Oh, you're right. Good afternoon. It's been a long day. I wrote this morning. We've known each other a long time, and I'll always be appreciative for your assistance when you were Attorney General in Florida after the shooting at my high school at Marjory Stoneman Douglas in my hometown of Parkland when we passed a bipartisan bill, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which was the largest policy response to a school shooting in American history. Your department also prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law a constituent of mine and former felon that had plans to kill me when he was picked up by law enforcement after he was target practicing in his backyard with 2 rifles, a scope, a silencer, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, an anti-Semitic manifesto. My name was the only name on their target list, and my kids found out about this from their friends at school. So thank you. However, the most transparent administration in American history. Before Trump, we didn't know the word transparency, apparently. It's been 12 months since you gave Republican influencers part 1 of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened. The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax. He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama. Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey discharge petition. Republicans drop a rule, a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House says passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Trying to stop the necessary 218 signatures, according to Republican members that signed it, the White House brought them into the Situation Room, you know, the place where the president goes for time of war, promising things like appropriations or maybe even to primary them. People in the room say you were there. It didn't work. We get the 218 signatures. We eventually passed the Massey petition. You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress. Every member of the House except one and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them. Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2008, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. He and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public, and in 2012, we find out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. There are documents in the files that dispute the president's claim that he kicked Epstein out of his club. Allegedly, the president said that he asked Epstein to leave. Supported now, that's disputed though, statements from the manager of the club. Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see, flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm gonna give it a grade. I just wanna see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find offense to that. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the burn book.
Shame.
I want it from the burn book. Which is the best one? What you got?
Has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to clear something up that was said earlier and is frequently said and is manifestly not true. And that is the supposed small number of crimes committed by immigrants or illegal immigrants in the country. That has been based on a poorly done study by the Cato Institute, and I believe the Cato Institute itself has even updated that study. The reason that we know that study is not true is that those statistics are not out there. For whatever reason, when somebody is arrested, even for very serious crimes, we do not have on the paperwork whether that person is a legal or illegal immigrant, okay? If I go to one of my local sheriffs in Wisconsin and ask them how many illegal immigrants in your jail, they will say, I have no idea. We don't keep track of that. When I tour the federal prison right outside of my district, and I ask them, in this federal prison, how many of your inmates are illegal aliens, they will tell me, we have no idea. We don't keep track of that. So whenever you hear a Democrat or anybody, or a pundit, say that, oh, there's so few illegals committing crimes, it is based on nothing, because those statistics are not available anywhere. What I would offer in the next round of appropriation bills, if one of my Democrat colleagues wants to help me out, perhaps in appropriations we can get funds to add to all the paperwork whenever anybody is convicted of crime as to whether or not they are citizen or non-citizen. And then we will have the statistics. But otherwise, whenever you hear somebody say on MSNBC or wherever, oh, so few crimes are committed by illegal immigrants, they don't know what they're talking about because nobody has those numbers. Okay, there's the first thing. Now, the next thing I want to point out, we have had what I think is an unprecedented situation in Minnesota in which they are not assisting ICE in dealing with crimes that are going on up there. In other words, ICE is left to its own devices. When I talk to my local sheriffs, they tell me that whenever a federal agency is engaged in work in Wisconsin, they always make themselves available in case that federal agency needs assistance. This could be something like ICE under DEI. It could be drug enforcement. It could be ATF. It could be FBI, it could be Secret Service, it could be the U.S. Marshal. Nobody that I have been able to find, any sheriff in the state of Wisconsin, is aware of any circumstances in which they did not make themselves available to federal law enforcement, either if they need somebody extra to do surveillance, to just park a marked car outside the area, to assist in apprehension of a criminal, if they need assistance with an additional SWAT team, if they need to transport somebody. Local law enforcement is always there. Now, you are not in charge of ICE, but you're in charge of several other agencies. Have you ever heard of anything like what's going on in Minnesota, where the governor or the local mayor refuses to give assistance to federal law enforcement?
I have in Portland and some other cities where they weren't cooperating. But as I said, I spent about 4 days. I did spend 4 days in Minnesota, and I believe many of the local law enforcement wish they could work with us to make their city safe.
Okay, now we'll switch to something else. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this today. You're obviously very bright, obviously very confident, and something I love. You tolerate fools gladly, so I appreciate that trait. You suffer fools gladly. In hearings like this, we often focus on new initiatives undertaken by the department. Today, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss actions implemented under the Biden administration's Department of Justice, such as the Foreign Influence Task Force that you have since terminated. And it's always rare to see anything in the government terminated. But could you elaborate on those decisions and highlight the accomplishments of your tenure at Justice?
Thank you for asking that. We are out of time, but may I answer, Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. The Biden administration weaponized the Foreign Corruption Practices Act. And on February 10th, President Trump issued an executive order pausing that for a DOJ review. Under Deputy Attorney General Blanche's supervision, a comprehensive review was led, and the department issued new guidelines protecting all Americans and protecting against the weaponization that happened under the Biden administration.
Time the gentleman has expired. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York, and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those 2 documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you
were
unredact
lead
this?
counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking. I'm
if they're
talking.
not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
Even though you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
To continue to protect
and they're not privileged,
Time belongs to the member.
We'll be happy to release them.
We'll stop the clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
even though you used improper redactions to protect Donald Trump and other predators associated with Jeffrey Epstein, you did the exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted, and it was not. And it's clear this was not a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names. One is redacted, 31 are not. So someone looked at it and decided to redact something. And I will tell you that that is clearly intentional to intimidate these survivors and victims. Now, in an interview last week—
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche—
You can't go off script.
—said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and estimate and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you, who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And I yield back.
We will go to the good gentleman from North Carolina, Congressman Knott.
Thank you. May I have a moment, Congressman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Here we go. Here's the photograph. This is why he wanted to repeat everything that had been said previously on Epstein. This is his state, New York. You probably don't even know who this is. Wahid Mohammed from Afghanistan.
Yes, because I'm no longer a prosecutor.
Convicted of assault. Wow, he represents New York. Wow, yet he doesn't care about the illegal aliens convicted of crimes. Assault and homicide. No longer a prosecutor, so he doesn't care about his constituents. Here we go. Arson, El Salvador, Miguel Palacios. Fermin Flores Ramales, Mexico, rape.
Let's talk about the 70% of immigrants who are detained without a criminal conviction or arrest.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Time belongs to Congressman Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Attorney General, I want to be sure that the American people understand exactly what we're referring to when we talk about sanctuary policies. They are often framed in sort of innocuous terms like, we refuse to take part in immigration law. And when you add up all of the population represented by these cowardly politicians in sanctuary jurisdictions, whether it's a county, city, or state, sanctuary jurisdictions account for roughly 40% of the United States. Now, in reality, it's much more than just a passive exercise. Is that not correct?
Yes.
It's unbelievably active. And in terms of breaking down these terms, I want to break it down in as clearly a term as I can. What is a federal detainer? for the American people? Please describe it.
A federal detainer is when someone is held in federal custody.
Yes. And when a federal detainer is issued to local law enforcement, they are obviously in local or state custody, correct?
Yes.
And federal officers take note of that apprehension and they say, we want to come and apprehend him or her to deport them. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in these sanctuary jurisdictions, whether it's California, Illinois, New York, or other places, even in North Carolina, there are sanctuary jurisdictions. That federal detainer often prompts not any cooperation, not any assistance, but a release onto the streets. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and Congressman, a federal detainer is federal law.
Yes.
That people must abide by, yet these jurisdictions, many of these jurisdictions are not abiding by that.
And we hear a lot of talk from the other side about victims of violent crimes, sex crimes, murders, whatever it may be. But I want to be very clear. Illegal aliens who have been arrested for committing some of the most heinous crimes, they have been released by sanctuary cities, by sanctuary states, rather than being turned over to the federal government for deportation. Isn't that correct?
It is, and it's sad for all Americans that any jurisdiction would do that. These are some of the most violent criminals I think we've all seen.
Yes. And despite their best efforts to obstruct you and the president in making us all safer, I just want to go through a quick list again of the accomplishments that you have been in part responsible for achieving. True or false, the country now has the lowest murder rate in 125 years.
Yes.
True or false, 62 major cities are now reporting rapid decline in murder rates.
Yes.
True or false, robberies are down nearly 20% over the last year.
Yes.
True or false, violent crime is down almost 15% over the past year.
Yes.
True or false, right here in Washington, D.C., violent crime is down almost 30% since President Trump took office.
Yes, and the number may be even better than that, but yes.
Good.
Yes.
True or false, the DEA has seized over 200,000 kilograms of cocaine since President Trump took office.
I believe so, and 78,500 kilos of meth and more than 260,000 kilos of cocaine.
Unbelievable.
That's lives saved every day for all of us, for
Absolutely.
families, for children.
And then true or false, the Department of Justice under your leadership has a 92% success rate at the Supreme Court?
I believe so.
Or ballpark?
Ballpark.
And then true or false, this administration is attacking the waste, fraud, and abuse that we have seen in places like Minnesota that is removing billions of hard-earned tax dollars from this country.
Absolutely, and President Trump is committed to doing that in every city in this country.
And Madam Attorney General, just to be very brief here, I want to be sure that you know that many on this committee made very serious efforts to try to amend the Epstein petition to give you the resources and the time to protect victims, to go through and to have the necessary runway to thoroughly go through that file. Unfortunately, those requests were met with refusal, and we were unable to make the necessary amendments. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
The good gentleman yields back. We turn to the good lady from California, Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Attorney General, for being here today. I want to talk with you about an issue on which there is broad bipartisan agreement: the importance of ensuring trust between the American public and those government officials who wield powerful law enforcement responsibilities. So, Attorney General, would you agree that it is important for law enforcement leaders to be honest?
Of course, as well as members of Congress.
Thank you. And would you include yourself as a law enforcement leader?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You know, President Trump has also, he has referred to himself as the chief law enforcement officer of this country. So do you believe that President Trump is honest?
He is the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, and
that
not only is
Trump
he keeping
honest?
this country safe,
Do you
he
believe
is keeping
he is
this
honest?
world
It's
safe.
a simple question,
Of
which
course
you didn't
I do.
answer.
He is
okay,
the
thank you.
commander-in-chief.
Last June, Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman, her husband Mark, and their dog were brutally murdered in their home. And your USA's office in Minnesota investigated this crime and obtained a 6-count indictment of the murder suspect, stating that he had intent to kill, injury, harass, and intimidate Minnesota legislators. And I have the copy right here. I read through it. Yet a few weeks ago, President Trump suggested publicly that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was behind these murders, posting on his Truth Social account a video raising this conspiracy theory. And it wasn't true. And you know it wasn't true, or else you would not have brought an indictment against the subject. Do you know what else Trump has said? He has said he has cut gas prices by 1,400%. False. That he won the 2020 election.
Actually,
False.
gas is down to $1.99 a gallon, thanks to President
That he didn't
Trump.
know Epstein.
Maybe $5
False.
in California.
It's my time, Mr. Chair. That he sent water to LA during the wildfires. False. That Governor Westmore of Maryland called him the greatest president of his lifetime. False. So many tales, too many to keep up. But I want to go back to what he said about Tim Walz. Do you agree that President Trump undermined public trust in law enforcement by suggesting that Governor Walz was involved in the Hortman murders?
I am not familiar with that statement.
Well, that is a disappointing response, and it is also why your office and Donald Trump have zero credibility, because I know, and you know, it was a right-wing extremist who murdered the Hortmans, and you and the president are being dishonest with the American people. Last fall, after the horrific shooting of Charlie Kirk, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. And his exact words were, "I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy." Do you agree with this statement? You're taking too long, Madam Attorney General. But you know the answer, because your own department has addressed the question. In 24, the DOJ's research arm issued a report on domestic terrorism, stating that the number of far-right attacks continues to outpace all other types of terrorism and domestic violence extremists. The DOJ published the report, and after the president made those comments, the DOJ took the report down. And I sent you a letter asking you a simple question. Why did the Justice Department remove the data that shows right-wing extremists have killed more innocent people than left-wing extremists?
Did you refer to immigration enforcement as domestic terrorism?
You should answer my question.
Yes.
You're on my time, but you won't. And what I am asking you to do is put the report back, restore the data. Stop scrubbing important data from your website. Stop taking down reports that you know the American people need to know about. There are violent, dangerous people out here with real threats, and the dishonesty from your agency comes from the covering up of these threats that could hurt American people and put our lives at rest. Do better. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
The lady yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
May I have one moment?
You may.
Her district includes Culver City, and she's not talking about any crime in her districts, nothing about helping crime in her district. She's not even worth getting into the details.
Well, thank you, Madam Attorney General, and we are grateful to have you here today. And let me just say that you've shown great perseverance today, and I think you're coming to the last lap here of those of us that are left, but I applaud your strength and I applaud your resolve. Madam Attorney General, as a pastor for over 37 years now, I take serious issue with any attempts by agitators to disrupt church services or activities at houses of worship. And I just want to take a moment to clarify some things. I realize you can't talk about pending cases per se, but I do want to ask some very general questions for clarification. Does the DOJ consider unauthorized entry into a house of worship to be protected activity under the First Amendment when undertaken by a member of the press?
Unauthorized with the intent of disrupting, yes.
Okay.
Even if it's a blogger like Don Lemon.
Correct. How does the DOJ distinguish between news-gathering activity and expressive or protest conduct when a press defense is asserted?
Congressman, I met with the pastor of that church, and what happened there was horrific. Of course, the press is welcome, and I would hope all houses of worship, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's a church, any house of worship. However, what happened here is a pending case again, but within the four corners of the indictment, they were, quote, gearing up for a resistance. They entered a house of worship, and I think the video speaks for itself. What happened in there, what the video doesn't show, is there were approximately 400 parishioners in there on a Sunday morning, families, grandparents with canes, children upstairs in Sunday school their parents were blocked from getting to them once this resistance took place, and they had named it Operation Pull-Up. It was heartbreaking for those families. They were terrified. I think they've all said that, and nothing like that should happen in this country, and under my watch, it won't.
Thank you. And just to clarify, accosting members of a congregation and creating a scene marked by intimidation and threat inside a house of worship would not be protected First Amendment activity, correct?
Absolutely not, and a grand jury has indicted individuals over that.
Thank you. One other question, just shifting a little bit. You know, my home state of North Carolina has been making national headlines at times, and particularly in the city of Charlotte. We've made pleas at times for our governor to get involved, bring in the National Guard. Our Fraternal Order of Police had pointed out that we were about 270 local cops below what we needed in order to adequately police the city. And yet the governor's declined to offer to partner with the federal government to bring in reinforcements to Charlotte. I want to give you just a few moments, really the balance of my time, to explain the impact that Memphis Safe Task Force has had on crime and safety in Memphis, because I know there was a place we saw that cooperation has tended to breed great results, and I would love to hear a little more about that.
Thank you. And I have numbers for you too. Well, and we're all right here in DC, we're all living right here in DC, and I think we've seen the remarkable impact that it has working with members of the Democrat Party on this, with law enforcement, with the mayor, with the police chief, doing everything we can to make DC safe. As of February 9th, there were nearly 10,000 arrests. This is DC. 1,000 illegal guns seized since the operation began, with carjackings down 81% from this time last year, and violent crime down 42%. DC is safer because of it. We know we had a National Guardsman shot, and we had a beautiful young woman killed. I went to her funeral, and I keep in touch with the National Guardsman who was shot, his parents. He's doing great. He's a miracle. Please continue to pray for him. I know my time is up, but same results I spoke about earlier in Memphis, and we're still working on that with the help of Make Memphis safe again.
Well, again, I think it just draws an incredible contrast between what we've seen happening in Minneapolis versus what we've seen happen in DC, what we saw happen in Memphis, and what I would love to see in some ways, if we could ever get our governor to work with us in North Carolina, to happen in Charlotte. But with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record the research that Representative Kamlager-Dove and I referenced concerning the threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, which the Department of Justice scrubbed from its website in September.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States?
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted. So what we talking about? Convict Texas, some of these perpetrators that rape these women that are sitting behind you that you refuse to even acknowledge they are here.
Time belongs to the gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds back to make up for the yelling? Thank you. General, did you have anything further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Thank you, General, and thank you for being here. And this has been quite a spectacle to observe today. I think it's sad. I ran for Congress because I thought we had serious problems in this country we wanted to try to fix together, and this performance today, not yours, General, but some of my colleagues, has not shored up my confidence that we are up to the task. You and I served together for 8 years when you were Attorney General of Florida and I in Kansas. You served professionally. I'm glad to be able to serve with you in these new roles, and I'm glad you're there, both generally and today. Part of the reason I ran for Congress is because in my former role, I saw in the real world, in my state, the consequences of failed U.S. immigration and border security policy. And I'll spare you the lengthy recitation, but let me give you the short version. I sit here and think about a fellow who was running, I believe it was drugs for the cartels, and shot a police officer in Oklahoma, drove across the border into my state, kidnapped an old man, and then invaded a house and shot at cops before we ultimately neutralized him. He's in prison now for, I believe, the rest of his life. I'm thinking about a drunk driver who was in our country illegally, never should have been here, and one night killed a young deputy in southern Johnson County, Kansas, who was making a traffic stop on another individual. Drunk driver ran into him, never should have been here, shouldn't have happened. Thinking about a guy who was deported repeatedly, came back and ultimately murdered, I believe it was 4 people in Kansas City, Kansas, and then fled to Missouri and killed a 5th guy. He died in prison. I'm thinking about a guy we prosecuted who wasn't supposed to be in this country, who raped a child in a little rural county up north on the Nebraska border, and we sent him to prison for, I believe, the rest of his life. Thinking about a guy who wasn't supposed to be here at all, who murdered, I think it was his wife or his domestic partner in an act of domestic violence in northwest Kansas. Thinking about another guy who was here and joined up with some folks who were citizens and committed a crime spree and then thought he might get caught, so he killed one of his accomplices. And we sent him to prison for the rest of his life. And that's just the ones I'm thinking about sitting right here. And you know what's common in all of those? They all committed violations of my state's law. They were caught by my state's law enforcement. They were prosecuted by my state's prosecutors. They are serving time in my state's prisons. And if and when they ever get out, the United States has said they need to be sent out of this country because of what they did. There's a list, you're holding up photos, General. There's a list on the Department of Homeland Security's website. It has about 280, 290 people like that in my state of Kansas. And you know what? We haven't made headlines like Minneapolis. We haven't made headlines like Memphis. We haven't made headlines like Los Angeles. And you know why? Because our cops are professionals and our politicians, by law, allow them to do their job and to work with federal agents for safe handoffs in order to do everything that's supposed to be done, justice under state law, and the justice of deportation on the back end. So I want to do something that's been rare here today, General. I want to ask you about public policy. Donald Trump won't be president forever. I would like to lock in some of these gains we have made in public safety. Should we be exploring the idea, for example, of beefing up 287G partnerships, or maybe replicating that so that state prosecutors can work more closely with federal prosecutors to get deportation orders as well as state convictions?
Absolutely.
In terms of sanctuary jurisdictions, when a sanctuary jurisdiction says as a matter of politics, go pound sand to the feds, we won't honor your detainer, so they release those people I'm talking about into their communities. And those people commit another crime of property or violence against citizens. Should those citizens have some type of civil redress against the jurisdiction that as a matter of public policy turned those people loose who created the new victims?
Yeah, and Congressman, it's risking the lives of all of the citizens of that jurisdiction.
And you've been sued a lot, or the administration has, by folks who don't like your policies.
Hundreds of times.
You've won many of those.
Yes.
Isn't it the case that the law says under Rule 65 that when you win those and there's a wrongfully entered injunction that there's supposed to be a monetary remedy for that, so there's a cost?
Yes.
And didn't the president direct you and other agency heads to start seeking bonds in those cases?
Yes.
And should we beef up the law in that area by codifying that requirement going forward?
I would love to discuss that with you.
Thank you, General. Thank you for being here.
Gentleman yields back. Well done. Some of the questions he raised, we plan on taking up in a markup in a couple weeks on the whole sanctuary jurisdiction issue. With that, I recognize the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Attorney General, for taking the time to speak with us. We certainly really appreciate it. I've got a series of questions for you that we can get through pretty quickly, I think. Can you tell me, is it true that the Biden-Harris DOJ raided President Trump's home?
They did.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ allow Jack Smith to spy on over a dozen Republican members of Congress?
Absolutely.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ seize the phone of a sitting Republican congressman?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and Jack Smith pay at least $20,000 to confidential human sources to provide information on President Trump?
At least.
At least. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and FBI fail to apprehend the suspect who placed pipe bombs near the Capitol ahead of January 6th?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ target parents as domestic terrorists?
Absolutely.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ target pro-life Catholics, going so far as to interview a priest and a choir director?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ send FBI SWAT teams to arrest pro-life advocates with no criminal histories?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ use the FACE Act to target pro-life advocates while it allowed anti-life agitators to vandalize, destroy, and firebomb pregnancy resource centers and churches?
Multiple times, I believe.
Multiple times. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ ever determine who leaked the Dobbs decision?
I can't discuss that. No, under Biden-Harris.
Got it.
No.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ and FBI target whistleblowers for revealing waste, fraud, and abuse within the department to Congress?
Not to my knowledge.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ refuse to say whether it coordinated with Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, and Letitia James in their lawfare against President Trump?
They refused.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ slow-walk the criminal investigation and prosecution of Hunter Biden?
That's an understatement, in my opinion.
Yep. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ determine who brought cocaine into the Biden White House?
They did not.
They did not. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ cover up the extent?
As far as we know, they did not.
Right, that's right. Did the Biden-Harris DOJ cover up the extent of the Russia collusion hoax?
Absolutely, in my opinion. Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ seek leniency from a federal court for an IRS contractor who leaked sensitive tax information on over 7,600 Americans, including President Trump?
Yes.
Did the Biden-Harris DOJ sue Texas because the state wanted to secure its own southern border?
Yes.
And finally, did the Biden-Harris DOJ attack SpaceX for hiring too many Americans?
I believe they did.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and I appreciate that a lot of this is being cleaned up under your leadership. So thank you for returning the DOJ back to its core focus, which is on the rule of law. And I think that we see the results of that. I've got a few more similar questions for you. How have, over the past year since President Trump has been in office, how have murders trended in the United States?
Since President Trump has been in office, the murder rate has dropped to a historic 20% drop in the national murder rate, lowest since 1900. 20%
drop in 1 year. That's incredible, isn't it?
And that's thanks to the incredible men and women of law enforcement, FBI, DEA, ATF, everyone working together to solve violent crime, along with our sheriffs, our local law enforcement, working as a team throughout this country, and our great state and federal prosecutors.
Yep. And how have robberies trended? Have they gone, even if they've just gone up or down?
Robberies, all violent crime, all violent crime has decreased, as well as robberies.
So murders, violent crime, the country is more safe now, it's fair to say, would you agree, than it was a year and a half ago under Joe Biden?
Absolutely, and Director Patel is working tirelessly to catch those, I'm sure you've been seeing, on the most wanted list. He and Deputy Director Bongino from day one said, we're going to get the most wanted list, and that's what's been happening, working hand in hand with all of our agencies.
Yep. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for the work you've been doing to refocus the DOJ again on doing your core job. We're very happy with it, and I'll yield the remainder of my time to the chairman.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. I would just say, earlier one of the Democrats said that they said, who are you, who you are? And I think you're the Attorney General who I think on the first day disbanded the FIDF, first day on the job, rescinded the memo that required spying on parents that Mr. Garland had issued, and stood up the weaponization working group. I think you did that all on day one. Not to mention, you're the first Justice Department that's put in place, as we've talked about earlier, this Deputy Attorney General for combating fraud. So we appreciate that, and of course, all the things that Mr. Gill pointed out with the crime stats that have went down. So our last questioner today, but not the least, is the gentleman, oh, I'm sorry, we're gonna have two more. We got Mr. Onder and then Mr. Baumgartner. So Mr. Baumgartner, well, let's go that way since you're here. You're ready to go. Mr. Baumgartner, and then we'll come back to Mr. Onder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi. You know, being a freshman on this committee, you always get a bit surprised, I guess, even 1 year into my term here, how theatrical days like this can be. But I think you've performed well today and answered the questions well today, and that's a credit to you and appreciated by the American people. You know, the Epstein issue is certainly important and is important for the victims. I think both I and the American people have a little bit of trouble taking the Democrats super seriously on this issue when they have been so uncurious about President Clinton's relations with Jeffrey Epstein. And even myself, I had no idea that there was actually a sitting Democrat congresswoman who had taken substantial campaign donations for Mr. Epstein, only when that came light on the floor with the potential resolution. And you would think there would be more outrage on those types of things if they were going to be taken credible. But we do know the performance value of what goes on in this committee. I want to talk about the big things that Department of Justice is doing. And when I look at the dramatic decrease in crime in this country in the last year since the Trump administration has come, you'll see the board behind me. Violent crime plummets across major U.S. cities. And I guess so my first question would be, and when it comes to the big stuff, how are you guys getting this stuff so right? What contributes from your perspective to this dramatic decrease in crime in major U.S. cities under the Trump administration?
When I first took office, I met with all of our agencies. And the one thing that stuck with me, that one of the heads of the department said to me, one of the law enforcement department heads, President Trump has taken the handcuffs off us so we can keep the people of America safe. And that's what he's done. He has given our law enforcement officers the tools that they need and the backing that they need, the support that they need to combat violent crime and all crime throughout this country. And, you know, I'd be remiss, we've talked about the FBI, we've talked about DEA a bit, but can I please brag about ATF? Rob Cicada and Dan Driscoll, of course, who has been our acting head of ATF, have done a remarkable job stopping guns from flowing into Mexico, not harassing gun owners. 26,965 violent crime cases have been initiated, including more than 4,300 firearms trafficking cases. More than 1,200 of those are tied to gun trafficking in Mexico. I talk to them almost daily.
Thank you.
And they're working so hard.
Well, thank you, Attorney General. Again, you know, I look back at this last year, and we've had this historic tax cut. Yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, the National Cancer Foundation ran full-page ads thanking Congress, the administration, for doing more for cancer research than has ever been done before. I was just meeting with Habitat for Humanity out in the hallway, and they came and thanked us for doing more than's ever been done for Habitat for Humanity. So there's been so many accomplishments, but I really think this crime is the biggest deal of all. But I do have some concerns. on this issue, and those also are respect how we keep people safe with sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. And I remind everyone, and as I'm sure you know, Madam Attorney General, that when we had the terrible terrorist attacks of 9/11, the number one recommendation of the 9/11 Commission was to reduce barriers between all levels of law enforcement. They specifically pointed to things like fusion centers, Joint Terrorism Task Force, and getting local law enforcement and federal law enforcement to work together and communicate on a regular basis. And I would just like your perspective, because we have a more complex global threat than any time since World War II. We still have Islamic terrorism. We have spies from China, Iran, Russia, all these things. And what does sanctuary cities and states do for communication law enforcement? How does it make us less safe?
Sanctuary cities and states are attempting to prevent communication among all the law enforcement agencies. And of course, that's keeping all of America less safe, especially when the violent criminals are fleeing to those jurisdictions because they believe they're protected. But with all of our joint task forces, I see it every day, Congressman, how well, despite what these liberals are trying to do, Donald Trump's administration is working tirelessly to protect all of Americans, and all of our agencies working hand in hand to keep America safe.
Well, you guys are getting the big stuff right. You look at that decrease in crime across the country, you ought to take a victory lap. Well done.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here on this long day. And I want to thank you most of all for your leadership in your whole career defending victims. And now I want to take a moment to talk about you protecting victims from a different kind of child abuse, that medicalized child abuse that goes under the banner of gender-affirming care, that far too many of my Democrat colleagues enthusiastically support and unapologetically support. Shortly after returning to office, President Trump signed an executive order directing HHS to review the clinical evidence and determine whether sex-rejecting interventions caused more harm than good. HHS reached the same conclusion that the UK and Finland and Sweden reached, that the risks are serious and that imposing this so-called care on minors was not appropriate. This executive order also directed you as Attorney General to, quote, work to draft, propose, and promote legislation to enact a private right of action for children and the parents of children whose healthy body parts have been damaged by medical professionals practicing chemical and surgical mutilation, which should include a lengthy statute of limitations. Last September, you transmitted that bill to Congress. It has been my honor to introduce that bill as the Chloe Cole Act. We named the bill after Chloe Cole, who sat where you're sitting just a few years ago on her 19th birthday. During a hearing chaired by now Speaker Mike Johnson, I'd like to play a clip of her testimony that day to remind us of our story.
On to puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest. And the skin grafts that they took of my nipples are weeping fluid today. And they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said.
Chloe testified that day that what she needed was mental health therapy, but she never received it. And she was not suicidal until after they did these horrible things to her. She pleaded with Congress to act so that future children would not suffer what she did. Last week was a major turning point in for these medical malpractice claims when a detransitioner was the first to successfully hold doctors liable with a $2 million settlement for what they did to that poor girl. Just days later, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons announced that they would no longer do transgender surgeries on minors, in the AMA followed suit. This proves that if the bill your DOJ drafted were passed into law, these barbaric practices would end immediately because all victims would be able to hold those who harm them accountable. Could you share with us a little bit about your work in advocating for victims like Chloe and what a private right of action would mean for victims like her and their families?
Yes, and first, Congressman, thank you for championing this bill. And also to Chloe, what a brave young woman to come before this body.
Yes.
And
at age 19.
At age 19, and talk about what happened to her. It's not about just giving relief to children who have been harmed. It allows victims whose healthy body parts have been damaged to seek relief and obtain relief. And thanks to you, and we are proud to work hand in hand with you on this issue. And I think it's pretty sad none of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle even brought that up. But I hope they support this to protect all children throughout this country.
Well, General Bondi, thank you so much to you, to your department, to President Trump. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
I've just saved some UC requests for the end, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you kindly. Record low crime during the Biden-Harris administration. Crime down in every category in 2024 under Biden. FBI report says Trump takes credit for violent crime drop where rates were already falling. From NPR, Trump administration targets ATF with plans to cut jobs and ease gun restrictions. And then a few oldies but goodies, I've introduced these before about the claim that we didn't have anything to say about Epstein before the Trump administration. Raskin joins call for Attorney General to reopen Epstein case and publicly release Acosta misconduct investigation in documents March 1, 2019. Oversight Committee plans hearing with Acosta on plea deal with Epstein, July 10, 2019. And finally, 68 House members call for resignation of Labor Secretary Acosta, July 10, 2019.
Without objection, Attorney General Bondi, thank you for your service to the country. And thank you for being here for a long day. We appreciate your willingness to come and answer our questions and the great job you're doing for our country. And I got one thing I got to say. This concludes today's hearing. We thank our witness for appearing before the committee. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness or additional materials for the record. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.